I will try to challenge a little bit of the common wisdom linked with the subject of our roundtable, power plays, politics, technology, and design. I don't want to disappoint anyone, but I might not touch on Grand Paris as much as you might have expected. If it's a problem, stop me and we can talk just about Grand Paris, right? But I try to bring other kind of material, profiting by reSITE and the opportunity of being with you this afternoon. So let's think about the future of our cities. May I just ask one question for me to be able to understand? Who is in the room from Prague or from the Czech Republic? And yeah? Right, a vast majority, and the rest who is not? All right. So, let's try to be both like open-minded and also a little bit practical about those issues. Sometimes we feel our cities and city government and city governance and metropolitan systems, etc., they're fascinating, right? On the other hand, the lines are blurred, and it's growingly difficult to understand what we are talking about when we are talking about cities. Are we talking about our neighborhood, a symbolic vision of the city as we have in mind in Europe with this sort of core city center? Are we talking about urbanization? Are we talking about like agglomeration economics? Are we talking about organization of city government, about trendy topics, about whatever? Maybe a little bit of all of that. This sculpture of a city hall was so controversial when it was brought up in a public space in Vancouver at the time of the World Urban Forum in 2006 that finally it had to be removed. I never understood why this nice sculpture was so controversial, but apparently having the city hall turned upside down and show this sign of community leadership being unfinished did not match the expectations of the general public. You will judge. Preparing our session, I just remember this hydro from St. Petersburg in Russia in the beginning of June. You see the historical city, the Neva River, the nice setting, etc. Rather nice, rather complex. And I happened to be the week after in Amsterdam at a science park and drew this small sketch where you can see video, you can see bike, you can see bus, and you can see the trendy containers with the startup village, etc. And when I compared the two illustrations, I thought, we are dealing with the highly complex, more and more complex technological, social, whatever issues, but on the other hand, somehow our current city DNA or city modeling is rather simple or even simplistic or even binary, right? We tend to think about cities like running computers. We have a solution, we scale it up. We create a startup, then we think about conquering the world. Whereas somehow the city that exists, or the cities in general, is something about a little bit more complex than that. So this is our job, the job with the company that I established 10 years ago in Paris, dealing with these complex urban ecosystems, dealing with these issues of smart cities in various political and cultural contexts. You can see the manifest that was referred to in the previous session was in English and French. Then we issued it in Russian, and then we are working on it on an Arabic version. Not just translating it, but also working on the very notions. And when you add some of such cross-cultural aspects to, let's say, the global approach to sustainability, then you begin to understand that there is work ahead of us and nothing is fixed yet. My other job, I would say, is a not-for-profit chair of a think tank that I co-founded 6 years ago, really on metropolitan issues. It's not a think tank of thinkers, it's a think tank of practitioners, of companies. We talked about water, right? It's a think tank of people who are hands-on. So the experience that I will share with you this afternoon is issued from practice. And we are in this kind of network society, right? You can find Prague somewhere in the east. You can see how dense our urban systems are today. Even though this is an illustration, I think this is also something that we do all have in mind in the network society. Then when you zoom a little bit more, we are in the metropolitan society. I love this photo from the French astronaut Thomas Pesquet, which he shot a night in November last year. You can see Paris, you can see London, you can see Belgium, you can see Holland, Metropole, the Randstad, you can see the rural region, so close to, and when you consider Paris, it's so complex. London, it's so complex. And then, seen from 400 kilometers out of space, you can see that how close they are, right? All those systems. So when we are dealing with each metropolitan system, it's a world apart. Then those worlds apart, in fact, when you look from a broader perspective, they are being growingly connected with the one with the other. We know that. Huh? We know that. We practice that. But when we see that as a reality, then we need to acknowledge that maybe our practice and our knowledge is still lagging a little bit behind what is happening for real. Then this issue I will not touch on, but in the Anthropocene, right? Connected networks, metropolitan systems, and then the world is like being completely humanized except from remote part of Canada, the Amazon, the Sahara Desert, and Siberia, with this wonderful study that has been carried out by German small university about assessing current and evolution of road systems worldwide. So this is our environment. I don't want to be too long, but just to show that there are different options and share with you those options, not choosing either one. The design kind of approach that would be close to the digital issues with those kind of wording and those kind of things which you can see, think it over. This is Design Hub at the University of Twente in the Netherlands. And the illustration on the right side from the World Bank just shows the number of tech hubs or incubators in Africa. And as compared with a couple of years ago where there were practically none, this is really part of the ongoing changes which are going far faster than, I would say, our usual habit to deal with urban management. Another approach which I feel closer to is also try to get back to historical roots and understand that when we need to talk about the future, what will happen in 2020, 2030, 2050, whatever, we need to understand that not everything is fixed absolutely, and not everything is fixed because we are supposed to be dealing with this horizon, this number of data, this kind of equation. Looking back, for example, to this map of Siberia in the 18th century, the north was down, the south was up, etc. So we need to understand that sustainability and the global sustainability approach is shaping a way to see the future that might be sometimes a little bit disappointing, and it's not enough to look at the future with such lenses. And in fact, it's more interesting to try to connect the different lines, the lines of the evolution of the environment at the global level, the lines of the urban change, right? Moving from from a rural world to an urban world, and now to a metropolitan world. And if we don't understand how to play with the rules of a metropolitan world, with more than 1,000 metropolitan areas, over 500,000 people worldwide, not just the megacities, not just the agglomerations, but this metropolitan environment, which is becoming a major phenomenon of our urban world, from a societal perspective, from an environmental perspective, from a cultural perspective, from an economic standpoint. If we don't know how to play with the rules of that, then we will talk separately about smartness or about culture or about community development, but not connecting the dots. And in fact, we need to connect the dots because the society or the world is being transformed digitally. Internet, then the social networks, the connected objects, and a number of new issues which are coming all together while the pattern of urbanization is going on and on. Then you can figure out on such a mapping, right, where you are standing, what is your experience, and most important, how do you use the global resources as an asset for different practice or for changing practice at the local level. So we, with our company, with partners, we try to issue this manifest, which is available online, issue 10 principles and work on those principles, really trying to find ways to connect issues that usually are disconnected or separated the one from the others in a cross-disciplinary way through cross-sectoral responses, right? And issuing also another kind of approach, this will be my last point to start our discussion this afternoon, this approach of the Metropolitan Compact. So if you allow me to keep just one more minute about this Metropolitan Compact. You might know, you might remember that about a generation ago, the UN, under Kofi Annan, when he was Secretary General of the UN, thought that the Agendas 21, the sustainability framework, lacked some economic momentum, right? And decided to connect the business with sustainability. It was not obvious, but it was done. About a generation afterwards, it has been like common practice. The problem is now, when we are considering global frameworks, such as the Sustainable Development Goals between now and 2030, or the new urban agenda that was formed after the global conference Habitat 3 last year in Quito, it is not possible any longer just to deal with this global layer or this global level. And it's not possible either to just talk about cities or urban. We need to be more specific. And we need really to form a compact which is not just about space, but about contracts, about how we play the one with the others, culturally speaking, in a societal way or from an economic standpoint, and build those multi-party consensus, connect corporate social responsibility with city making, rebalancing our vision of what is urban and what is rural, and localizing, try to find a way to localize those global sustainable urban development goals in a metropolitan way. That is about reshaping the way we see the sort of nobility of the global level and the more a practical approach to the global level, changing the game of the rules, and understand that it is by shaping the metropolitan system in the right way that we might be able to build globalization in a more sustainable way too. Thank you very much.